Yes, guys, here we are, another episode of Teams Like Brighton. Sadly, I won't be involved in this one. Richie will be talking to Theo Squires over at the Liverpool Echo to talk about the big game at the weekend. I'm feeling quite confident about it. You heard me on the previous episode with Poet Zombie how I feel like we could get a 2-0 win out of this. Do feel like we've got the right track going in terms of form and momentum for us, but Liverpool are, well, they're Liverpool, aren't they? So I think we're going to be in for a tight game, but I do think that if De Zerbi puts forward the right momentum, the right tactics, and reads the game well, I think we could be in for a good response. But I'm going to stop talking to you guys. I'm going to leave it over to Richie, who will be discussing the match ahead and have a quick chat with Theo. So enjoy it, guys. Enjoy the match, and speak to you next week.
So I'm very lucky to be joined by Theo Squires of the Liverpool Echo. Theo, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Richie. Would be a bit better if Liverpool remembered how to play football these days, but I'm sure you'd be quite happy by the fact that they haven't. But yeah, all good.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll dive right into that. What's gone wrong for Liverpool? Obviously, they're very, very high standards, but what has gone wrong in your view this season for them?
It's a few things really. Like they've had quite a lot of injuries. I think they always seem to have a lot of injuries, but it has hurt them this year. And it was a case of first half of the season, just get through to the World Cup break, reset, go to Dubai, do your mid-season training camp, and just properly recharge your batteries. Get players back from injury, like important players like Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, and then you can go again second half of the season. But then Diaz suffers a setback with his knee, and apart from him, they've got most of the players back from injury now, and it's just still not working for them. They're lacking the energy, the intensity that has just made them so unbeatable in recent years. A pale imitation of the side that we see win the Premier League, win the Champions League, and they're just getting overrun game after game. The midfield, it's aging, it's injury prone, and then you've got a few youngsters there who are very raw. They've only really got one midfielder who's at the peak of his powers, and Naby Keita, and he's not started a game yet this season because of injury. He's out of contract next summer, so it's just like it feels like Liverpool are in transition. They've overhauled the attack over the past 12 months with letting Sadio Mane go, Minamino, Origi, but bringing in Nunes, now Cody Gakpo, um, Diaz as well. So they brought in a lot of attacking players, but they've just lost something in that midfield, and it's basically bleeding. So the whole midfield is hurting the rest of the team. Like the defence are looking isolated, the attack are isolated, not creating enough, and teams are just getting behind them so easily. We were there at the Champions League final, and after it, Carlo Ancelotti said Liverpool were very predictable to play against. Well, he's been proven right because they are. You know what their weaknesses are now. They've been playing a set way for so long, and when it works and everyone's on form, it's fine. It works brilliantly. Teams can't stop it. But it only takes one of them players to slip up, and it all falls apart now. They're gifting teams too many chances, and they just look devoid of any confidence. Maybe last season when they nearly won a quadruple, it was the end of the road for the squad that had delivered so much, and they need fresh blood in there desperately. But it feels like it's going to be another painful second half of the season before they can really do anything with it in the summer, because obviously funds are always going to be limited in January. The available players are always going to be limited in January. But it's been a painful season so far for Liverpool. That's just by their standards because of what we're used to. Like in another season, they'd be challenging City and Arsenal at the top. Instead, they're facing a real battle just to get in the top four.
Well, yeah, so many really interesting and well put points there. Obviously, you talked about a lack of intensity. Do you think that is it a mixture? Obviously, you said maybe aging players. So is the midfield the most sort of the biggest area of concern? Do they need to bring in some players this month to kickstart their top four hopes?
Yeah, really, they do. But the issue is the players that they would want to get in midfield. Like you think Jude Bellingham's probably the first choice target. He will be for a number of teams this season. Well, Dortmund don't want to sell him in January, and when it does come to the point of him being sold, it will be for over £100 million. It will be a club record transfer if Liverpool is successful, and they're up against the likes of Man City and Real Madrid. And if they're offering Champions League football and Liverpool are at real risk of not being able to get that transfer in. We know they wanted Tchouaméni in the summer. They sounded him out, and he said, no, I only want to go to Real Madrid. So I thought, fine, we'll wait for Bellingham, seemingly. Klopp's been very defensive of his current midfield options in the summer. And it was only really at the end of the window when he went back on that and said, yeah, we actually do need a new midfielder, and they got Arthur Melo. But you look at their options, they've got quantity there. And if you've got the options like Henderson and Fabinho playing at the previous heights, they have enough to get by. But Fabinho has been a massive decline from last season. Henderson's not been consistent. And then you got, I don't know, Milner's out of contract. He's had injuries. Thiago always seems to pick up the odd injury. Like I said, Keita's he hasn't started yet this season. He's out of contract. Another one who always gets injuries, Oxlade-Chamberlain. And there's a lot of pressure on the likes of Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones. Jones is another who's had injuries. They've just not been available. They've not been able to find rhythm. And they went through this period early in the season. I think Brighton were probably the last side in autumn where Liverpool actually had the 4-3-3 formation for a while. And thought, we need to change it. It's not working. They went through a succession of formations before going back to the 4-3-3 and thinking this could revitalise our fortunes. But they're still stuck with aging players who aren't at their best. And saying maybe they've just played too much football now. This is at the start of a natural decline. On paper, Henderson, Thiago and Fabinho is one of the strongest midfields in the Premier League. But we saw it against Wolves. It's just not. There's something not right with it now. Maybe it's a lack of confidence and they need to find rhythm and they can get it back on the pitch. But Liverpool need to find a way to play their ways back into form because they've already said that they don't have endless funds. It's not a monopoly. They're not going to be able to go out and buy whoever they want in January. If one of their targets was available for, say, 30, 40 million, maybe they could go and do it. It's what they've done with Gakpo. But the fact they're going to prioritise Gakpo over a midfield shows that they are spinning so many plates and only being able to keep so many of them going. It's been a struggle for them. And it's just waiting until the summer where this real midfield revamp can actually take place. But they've fallen asleep at the wheel because so many fans have been saying for so long, Liverpool need new midfielders. They've only signed, I think Thiago was the last midfielder they actually signed. That's 4 years ago now. So it's all very well relying on these players to keep delivering year after year. But at the moment, it feels like they've come to the end of that road.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, so in your view, you said that you mentioned about the transition. Do you feel that the way that Liverpool are going, it's best to sort of go back to the tried and trusted routine they had of the kind of 100-mile-an-hour approach, or do you think Klopp's trying to change them into a more technical or less kind of all-out attacking team? Or how do you kind of see it?
I think really last couple of months maybe it's been the first time Liverpool fans have gone, wish Gini Wijnaldum was still at the club. He left a couple of years ago now, and there wasn't really too much sadness in the fact that you're losing a player of that quality, partly because he didn't really do much for PSG and he's had the injury for Roma this year. But he was a great servant, but he was, I suppose, overlooked for what he did bring to the team. Like Liverpool fans were just, we've got Thiago now, we can take it to that next level. Maybe there was a feeling that they could combine what Liverpool do so well with maybe how Man City play football and create this new all-conquering style. But now when it's fallen apart, it's basically go back to basics, find a way to bring the Gegenpressing back, the rock and roll football that Klopp implemented when he first took over at the club. It doesn't matter how much quality you've got in that midfield. They just need to be able to run teams off the park again and have that pressing back. And I think because that was the start of the journey, there's that nostalgic feel for that could be the solution now. There's been accusations that maybe assistant manager Pep Linders has been involved a bit more in this transition for Liverpool and finding a new style. If you look at the players that they have brought in, when they were so effective early on, it was the pace of power of Salah and Mane on each wing, with Firmino making that perfect front three, with the hardest work in midfield you're going to find when Milner was still able to start every week, or you had Henderson and Fabinho younger, Gini Wijnaldum was still there, and you had your fullbacks able to bomb on and get so many assists, knowing that you had Fabinho in front of Van Dijk and one other centre-back who could deal with anyone, and teams have struggled to get past them. But now Van Dijk's had injuries, Fabinho's had injuries, the fullbacks haven't had quite the same confidence, they're not able to get us forward as much. When they do go forward, they're opening up the gaps at the back, and they don't have the pace out wide anymore in the same way. Like Salah's still there, Diaz did bring it, but when you look at, say, bringing in Harvey Elliott into the team, bringing in Thiago into the team, these are more players you'd expect to fit into Man City style. So it maybe feels like they were looking at Man City going, right, they're winning these seasons by a point. What do they have that we don't? And trying to become that. But they've forgotten their own identity along the way and just lost their way a little bit. But it's one where things are going wrong. You do look at everything and it's like, oh, is it this? Is it this? Trying to find a solution. It's something that Liverpool will have been working at so hard in Dubai to try and find answers, to try and find a way to piece it all back together. And it's just not happened for him from what we've seen so far since the restart.
When I went to the 3-3 draw between Liverpool and Brighton this season, it's, from my point of view, it seemed as if Liverpool were maybe relying on moments of magic rather than sort of flowing team play. Would you agree with that? And do you still think that's maybe the case, or what's your take?
It's one where it's a new team, I suppose, so to speak, because they've got in the new forward in Nunez, and they're trying to find their way. It's like you don't think that they're always going to find a way to score. You don't think they're going to score the opening goal. You think as soon as they concede, they're going to fall apart. There's no longer that belief that 10 minutes to go, losing or drawing, they will find a winner. They've lost that belief, in identity, intensity, whatever you want to call it. And it seems now that it's more individuals on a pitch chasing shadows without that link-up play. Like Liverpool have been spoiled, the fans, when you think Firmino, Mane, Salah was such a good front three for so many years. And now it's a new look trio trying to get it all to click. And it seems they're just relying on, say, Nunez, who's this agent of chaos, to make things happen, going, well, at least to unsettle defences, we can just lump it long to him or give it into his feet. He's going to have his elbows out. He's going to cause defences problems. He's got a hell of a lot of pace. But then there's the backlash because his finishing is very raw. It certainly seems that all the eggs are in the Nunez basket at the moment for making things happen. Like Salah's not been at his best and he's looking isolated at times. But like we saw it against Wolves at the weekend when Liverpool were woeful for 45 minutes. And moment of magic, as you said, that's what they're bringing out. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold puts in this stunning cross, Nunez instinctive finish at the far post, and suddenly there's a bit of life in Liverpool. Then they get their second goal from a defensive mistake. These aren't goals where they necessarily worked hard as a team, with the pressing. These aren't Liverpool goals. Like they've always had moments of magic, but it's something that they've lost from their game. The fact that they passing moves or the crossfield diagonals, whether it's a lack of confidence or something. Like the Brighton 3-3 draw, it was just one where there were mistakes, weren't there? Like I think that was the game where Firmino maybe scored from a set piece, a header, potentially. I'm not sure. It was so long ago now, but there was no goal as well. It's not quite Liverpool as we're used to seeing them. And it felt that was another game where late on, Liverpool have turned it round. They were 2-0 down. They've turned it around. They're 3-2 up. And I don't think anyone inside Anfield thought they were going to hold it. I think it was always that resignation that Brighton would get an equaliser. And there was even a Brighton didn't get a winner because it just gifted chances. And it's something that Liverpool fans haven't been used to seeing for a long, long time.
So we're 2 days out from the game. Obviously, I think the press conference from Jurgen Klopp is yet to happen right now. Can you just run through, obviously you touched on a couple of players, but can you just maybe run through a couple of the maybe absentees Liverpool-wise for the Brighton game, please?
Yeah, sure. So Diaz and Jota are still long-term absentees. I think Diaz we're expecting back in March time. Jota maybe February. I suppose Real Madrid took the 2 legs in the Champions League are their aims. Best case scenario. Virgil van Dijk, he came off against Brentford. He's out for a month. Artem Melo, he's still sidelined. We've only seen 13 minutes of him since he joined Liverpool on loan on the summer. And he's at best maybe back at the end of January, February. There's not really been anything confirmed on that. Roberto Firmino and James Milner, I think they picked up injuries either in Dubai in mid-season training camp. Firmino was in the training camp in Dubai. Milner was in the first game back against Man City. Now, there was talk that they'd be maybe back last weekend, but they weren't pictured in training. So we're waiting to see if they'll be pictured in training this week, and maybe Klopp will be able to confirm that they're back for the game at the weekend. But as things stand, they're also on the injury list. That's it, pretty much. But it's still, you've got other players trying to find rhythm, injury-prone players just coming back. Like Curtis Jones made his own comeback from injury against Brentford last week. Wasn't in the matchday squad against Wolves. Instead played the day after for the under-21s. And then a couple of the youngsters that they've got injuries as well. I think Stefan Bajcetic is suffering with something at the moment, which means he hasn't been involved. But Liverpool always like to keep these sorts of things close to the chest and not really divulge when players are going to be back. So we'll find out more tomorrow, providing Jurgen Klopp's asked about it. But they have got at least 3 big names in Van Dijk, Diaz and Jota, who are not going to be anywhere near that pitch on Saturday.
And final thing, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Theo. Please, can you give me your prediction for the game on Saturday?
This is a tough one. Jurgen Klopp said after the Wolves game that if Liverpool don't defend properly, like they play like they do against Wolves, there isn't even any point going to Brighton because they will lose. Brighton play a proper football game. They know how to play the game and they can get the result. And from the outside point of view, it seems that Graham Potter leaving hasn't made any difference at all. It's just same old Brighton playing good football, getting results done. I saw a bit of the Arsenal game and they're unlucky to lose that 4-2. You think Arsenal, the informed team in the Premier League at the moment, and they could have dropped points. Best case scenario for Liverpool, unless they find it, all their form again, is a draw. and Brighton's not exactly been the best place for him in times. So I'm going to go for an optimistic 1-1 draw, but you wouldn't be surprised to see him fall over again. They've got to find a way to find form, but at the moment, with recent performances, recent results, just can't see it coming.
Crikey. Well, I hope, well, maybe going forward, obviously I want Brighton to win this weekend, but hopefully going forward, your spirits will be lifted, because I'm sorry that they're putting you through this. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I found it very, very informative, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. Thanks so much for coming on, Theo, and yeah, hopefully enjoy the game.
No worries. Cheers for having us on.
Cheers.